So now we're getting into the good stuff, which is all about how to actually determine what's working and what isn't. Because for e-commerce stores, they can see their sales inside of Ads Manager. They can see very clearly that for every $1 they put into their ads, they get $3 or $4 back in sales. But for the rest of the Facebook ads world, this can be a little bit more complicated. So in this lesson, we'll be talking about how to analyze your campaigns, what benchmarks to look for to make sure you're on the right track, and also how to use this knowledge to guide your future advertising decisions. But as we're going through this, I want you to just remember that the metrics we're measuring within Facebook are really just based on actions that people are or aren't taking within our sales cycle. So let your audience guide you through this and tell you what's working for them or what isn't. So let's first talk benchmarks. Your CTR or your click-through rate should be somewhere between 1 to 2%. If your CTR is less than 1%, it might mean that something in your ad is not resonating with people. And we'll take a look at this inside of Ads Manager, but it's important that you're looking at your link clicks and your link click-through rates, not just your overall click-through rate, because that could mean they're clicking on, see more within the actual copy, or they could be clicking on other things to play the video or whatever. So it's sort of measuring all of the clicks on that ad as opposed to the actual link click, which is the bit that we're interested in. Then your CPM should be somewhere between $10 and $30. So your CPM is what Facebook is charging you to show your ads to 1,000 people. Then your cost per click, or your CPC, should range somewhere between 50 cents and $2. And then when we're talking about your landing page conversions, this is a really good guide for you to just kind of have in the back of your mind based on what you're looking for conversions for. So 30% plus would be for like a really simple sign up or download an ebook or register for a webinar or training or workshop, something like that that's free and super easy for people to sign up to. Between 5 and 15% is for people to actually book in a consultation or maybe request a quote, but generally it's to actually speak to a live human on a live call. That conversion rate is going to be a lot lower. 3 to 5% is an e-commerce stat, and that's just for comparison. So you know that if people are running ads straight to purchases, that conversion rate is really quite low between that 3 to 5%. And then I would say 3 to 10% for a paid offer like a digital product, depending on the price point. If it's, $10,000, if your training is $10,000, you're probably going to get very skewed conversion rates. And it also depends on how much you've warmed up your audience before you're asking them to purchase from you. So this is just a rough guide. Mainly, you want to be looking at that 30% conversion rate for people to opt into your email list. Then you want at least 15 to 30% of people to actually engage with whatever it is that they signed up for. So whether it's a webinar and 15% of people actually show up or watch the replay, or people actually go in and download your PDF, whatever way you want them to consume content in, you want to be tracking how people are consuming that content, and if there's enough people who are actually taking that extra step and engaging with your content, not just opting in for it. Because again, that's just giving you a bit of a health metric of, are these the right people to have on my email list? Are they actually taking that step further and engaging with the thing that they signed up for, or are they not even opening my emails? Which then brings us to the next point. You want to have between 30 and 50% open rates on that initial email you send them to deliver whatever it is that they opted in for. Your follow-up emails will have a much, much lower open rate, but that first email should be awesome. People are ready to dive in. They want to go in there. They want to find the thing that they've just signed up for. And at least 2 to 5% of them should be clicking on a link in that email to download that freebie, watch the replay, go to the webinar, whatever it may be. So I'm going to get into a case study in just a second so we can see how these stats work in action and how important or not important they are to the success of your campaign. But before we do that, I just wanted to throw in this hot tip in there to really make sure that you are measuring everything and keeping an eye on everything, but that you have really one success metric in mind per campaign. So you know that this is the thing you're working towards. For example, if you want to have less than $5 per lead or around $5 per lead, if all of these metrics are totally off from these benchmarks, but you're still succeeding with your goal of getting a $5 lead, and it's a good lead that's actually going through your sales cycle and engaging with your stuff, not just a cheap lead that's not doing anything for you, then that's awesome. Keep doing what you're doing, and just remember that these should really act as a guide for the health of your campaign, but they're not the be all and end all. So let's take a look at what I mean here with a case study from Sumo. So these two ads actually had the same budget, and the one on the left has really great stats throughout. So it has a low CPC, really good CPM, and a high CTR or click-through rate, because we can see that it's got a lot of clicks. But if the metric we're actually trying to measure for and strive for here is purchases, then the one on the right is a clear winner. And the reason for this big discrepancy between these two ads in terms of their overall performance for what we're trying to achieve is twofold. One is obviously the ad creative is different, but the main one is their campaign objective. The one on the left is optimized for traffic. So it's getting those cheap clicks, it's getting out to a lot of people, it's getting those eyeballs on this ad. But the one on the right is actually optimized for conversions and for purchases, which is the main objective, which is why it's actually doing a lot better in achieving our goals, even though the actual benchmark metrics that we're looking at are performing significantly worse, but it doesn't really matter because those sales are there. While these benchmarks are a really good way for you to keep an eye on the health of your campaign, absolutely, these could all be completely thrown out and totally off from what you think you should be at. But if you're achieving your goals, then who cares? But let's say you find that your campaign's not super healthy in terms of these benchmarks, and you're also not achieving your goals. So let's take a look at some things that might be wrong and the categories that they fall into. So the technical stuff will be anything to do with your actual structure and approach. So either your budget is wrong, meaning that you started a bit too high or too low. So if your cost per acquisition is $50, but your daily budget is only $25, you're not actually giving your campaign enough juice for even one daily conversion. So that's an example of it being too low, but it can also be too high if your audience is not big enough to handle a high budget. Now, in terms of the wrong campaign structure, there is so much that can be wrong there. You can have too many ads or not enough ads, or your audience size is too small because maybe you're using retargeting for this particular campaign and you've over segmented your audiences by saying, send these ads to people who saw my landing page but not my checkout page, then people who saw the checkout page but not the purchase page, and not the purchase page, but you get the point. You're basically just dividing your already quite small audience into even smaller ad sets, and it just means that none of your ad sets have enough people in them to run. Another one is campaign budget optimization or ad set budget optimization. So if you haven't actually tested out your best performing audiences, you do not want to be setting your budget at the campaign level, because Facebook will essentially just favor what they deem to be your best performing audience, which may not be the one that you actually want to be putting all of your budget behind. So while you're still testing things out and you're not really sure what's working, what isn't, it's best for you to just be setting your budget at the ad set level so you can make sure that the audiences that you want to give a lot of love to in this stage of your strategy are actually getting that budget to be able to take action from. And as we've already discussed, wrong objective is a really big one. If you really want leads, but you're running your ads for traffic, the wrong people are going to be seeing your ads, because remember that Facebook is going to show your ads to people who are most likely to perform the objective you're optimizing for. So if you are optimizing for traffic, Facebook's going to be showing your ads to people who are most likely to click on stuff and visit your stuff. But they might not be the people who are actually going to be signing up for your things. So make sure that you're really keeping an eye on what your actual objective is and you're optimizing your campaigns for this. In terms of your non-technical issues, these usually have to do with either your own expectations or the customer journey as a whole. So one thing I want you to keep in mind is that not all lead gen or sales funnels are created equal. If you're giving out a simple PDF, ebook, or checklist, or asking people to get a quote for a custom package or submit an inquiry to work with you, these are all very different leads, even though they are all leads. So for example, if you're doing Facebook ads for realtors, one of these leads could be worth 20 grand in commission for them. So of course they're going to be paying more to acquire that lead than a hairdressing salon, for example. And the cost that you can expect to pay per lead just to manage your own expectations will really depend on the outcome that you're offering to people and what that outcome is worth to them. So in this example, you're either getting a house or a haircut. Totally different, right? But then let's say your actual offer is maybe the same, but the outcome of that offer is totally different. For example, an online course teaching business owners who are going to learn how to grow their businesses versus an online course teaching moms how to make healthy lunches. Totally different outcome of those two online courses, which is going to give you very different cost per lead and overall revenue goals. So now jumping into our ads manager, I just wanted to show you a few campaigns from a marketing campaign that was for my social media free training that I ran a while back, that I actually ran to test out a few strategies within my Facebook ads account as if it was a brand new account and how I would go about optimizing things. So I think it's a really good case study for us to just have a look at some results and what we can learn from this. So these are just the only 3 campaigns that I have selected, but there were a lot more campaigns at that top of funnel and middle of the funnel, and I kept continuously optimizing and checking my results and seeing what was working and what isn't, testing out different audiences, different ads, all of those sorts of things that we're talking about here. But the reason I wanted to show you is because this is sort of my middle of the funnel ads that were just targeting people to sign up for this free training, and then my bottom of the funnel ads that were retargeting people who checked out the training, signed up, maybe looked at my sales page and hadn't bought the program yet. So if we were just looking at our initial results of these 2 middle of the funnel campaigns with the optimization for leads and registrations, my initial instinct would be to say, this middle of the funnel campaign actually was a lot more expensive for me, and this campaign performed a lot better in terms of cost per result. And then in terms of the other metrics, that's true too. My cost per link click was higher, my CPM was higher, and my click-through rate was actually lower, quite significantly lower, but still within a range that I'm happy with. And if all I was doing was optimizing for this, then I might want to turn this campaign off and say, that's not really performing for me as well as this one. But because I actually set up some custom conversions and within my ads manager and also within Google Analytics and my email marketing software, I'm tracking how many people from this category and this category are actually purchasing the program. Even though I'm not optimizing for this, I can see that, all right, I had 22 purchases here, 3 here. That's still really, impressive for this. But when you actually consider the amount that I spent on this campaign versus this one performed for me a lot better in terms of my cost per purchase. So this is a really good example of what we were talking about, that, you do want to be optimizing for your primary goal, which in this case would be registration. That's the thing you want to keep an eye on. But you also want to track what's happening with people throughout your entire sales cycle, because you might find that, all right, you're paying a little bit more for your registrations here, but these are people who are a lot more targeted to actually buying from you and engaging with you a little bit more. So you're probably better off having these people on your email list than these ones because of what's happening with them after they actually become a lead. So that's the first thing I would look at. The other thing would be in terms of reactions and comments and shares. So even though these 2 campaigns are both optimized for conversions and registrations, these guys are a lot more likely to engage with my stuff. So even though they're a little bit more expensive in terms of getting them to buy, it might mean that there's a potential for these audiences that are included in this campaign to be run for engagement campaigns or video view campaigns, because they're a lot more likely to engage with my stuff on Facebook, but maybe once they become a lead, they're not as primed to actually buy from me. And the reason I've also included this bottom of the funnel campaign is just so when you're looking at your aggregated results, you can see that, this is a pretty poor cost per purchase because this offer was being sold at $37. So it's actually costing me more to acquire my customers and they're paying me. But when I take my bottom of the funnel retargeting ads into account, I'm actually still ahead in terms of my return on ad spend. And then you can break that down into the ad sets within that campaign. So again, you just want to be looking at things at every level to see exactly how things are going. And that's exactly what I ended up doing here, and turning off my ad sets that were costing me a little bit too much for my purchases and keeping these ones running that were actually performing really well for me in terms of my return on ad spend. And they were also quite good in terms of my cost per registration or cost per lead. So the results here were quite good, but they're not all that different from the results down here. So if all I was looking at was how much it's costing me to get a registrant, then I would say, all right, all of these ad sets look like they're pretty even, which is not actually the case, because it turns out these guys up here are much higher quality leads because they're actually taking that extra step and purchasing from me. So this is a good way to look at which ad sets are working for you. But in terms of additional breakdowns that you can look at to analyze and optimize for future campaigns, on the campaign level, what you can do is just have these 3 campaigns selected and then look at them by the different delivery characteristics. Now, some of these are going away. So if you're not seeing all these inside of your ads manager, it's just because Facebook is currently in the process of updating this. But you can check out things like different countries that are working for you, different platforms, different placements and devices, and age ranges. Again, I think that is something that's going to go away. So I'm not sure how long you'll be able to optimize for this or have this in your breakdown. But at this stage, I'm still able to take a look at what it's costing me to get these people onto my email list within this particular age range, this one and this one, which will help to guide me to determine whether I'm maybe paying more for getting men onto my email list, which I always am. And same goes for my age groups. The older age groups, once we start getting into them, I'm paying a lot more for these leads in general, and they're not usually the people who are purchasing from me. And even if you're not able to break this down by age and gender, you can still do a lot with analyzing the success of your campaigns. Even if it's just in terms of country, regions, platforms, you might find that you're paying a lot more for showing your ads on Instagram versus Facebook, or vice versa. So come in here and do these sort of breakdowns and note down anything and everything that you can think of that might help to guide you in terms of constructing your future campaigns. And this is exactly why we were talking about the fact that, the more campaigns you run, the more you'll learn and the more profitable that all of this will be for you. And also, you might have noticed that I've got my columns customized here. So I usually create custom columns based on the marketing campaign that I want to look at, because I might be wanting to look at different things, especially with this one where I had custom conversions to look at that were only relevant to this campaign. So if you don't have these sort of last 2 here, you will still have all of these other ones. So if you're jumping into your ads manager, you'll probably have it selected on performance or something similar by default. So if you want to customize this, I really encourage you to come in here and go into customize columns and only really be looking at the metrics that are important to you, and actually removing the ones that you really don't need to be looking at, especially for particular marketing campaigns. So you can just remove any that aren't relevant to you, especially for purchases. A lot of the time for service-based businesses, that's not actually going to be a metric you'll be able to measure because of the complexity of your sales cycle. You might actually be selling people on live calls. It might not be as simple as having a checkout process that Facebook can measure off of, but you'll have your custom conversions in here that you can also track, or, you can come in here and really look at anything that's not already in here, like link click-through rate and your CPC, cost per link click, and your CPM and everything else. And feel free to move this around to however you want it in terms of your priority as well. So you don't necessarily have to have it in the order that you want it in, and then you can save this as a preset under whatever name is most convenient for you.